Dr. Minho Park rubbed his tired eyes and stared at the holographic display floating above his desk. The numbers made no sense. For the past 3 months, something impossible was happening across the galaxy. Ancient civilizations were disappearing. Overnight, the coffee in his cup had gone cold hours ago, but Minho barely noticed. His fingers moved quickly across the control panel, pulling up star charts that showed empty systems where thriving worlds had existed just weeks before. Red dots marked the abandoned territories, spreading outward like a disease across the map. "Still here, Park?" Director Unikim walked into the monitoring station, her footsteps echoing in the quiet room. Most of the night shift had gone home, leaving only essential personnel to watch the deep space sensors. Minho looked up at his supervisor, exhaustion clear on his face. "Director, you need to see this. The Zephyrian Empire went dark 3 days ago."
Ow!
All of it. Every single world. Every space station. Every quantum beacon. They just turned everything off and left. Una moved closer to the display, her expression growing serious. The Zephyrians had been one of the most powerful civilizations in known space. They had mastered quantum technology millions of years ago and built an empire that spanned 12 star systems. Their technology was so advanced that most species considered them practically gods. "What about the others?" she asked, though she already knew the answer would be bad. "The Crystalline Collective dissolved their megastructures yesterday. The Eternal Dynasty abandoned their ring worlds. The hive mind severed all connections and went silent." Minho's voice grew quieter with each name. 47 civilizations in total. Some of them have existed longer than Earth has had life on it. Lieutenant Jinwuli looked up from his communication station across the room. "Director, we're picking up something. Fragmented transmissions from the Outer Rim territories." "Put it through the main speakers," Una ordered. The static-filled voices that emerged from the speakers sent chills through the room. The universal translator struggled with the alien languages, but certain phrases came through clearly. "They're coming. The plague spreads. Nowhere is safe. Must flee before it's too late." Jinwoo adjusted the frequency, trying to get clearer signals. "The transmissions are coming from refugee ships. Thousands of them, all heading away from the galactic core." "Away from us," Minho said quietly. The 3 humans stood in silence, the terrible truth settling over them like a heavy blanket. The abandonment pattern wasn't random. It was spreading outward from human-controlled space in an expanding circle. Earth sat at the center of the exodus. "But we haven't attacked anyone," Una whispered. "We've barely even made contact with most of these species." Dr. Hedgen's song entered the monitoring station, carrying a datapad and wearing the worried expression she'd worn for weeks. As the head of xenological studies, she had been tracking the alien exodus from the beginning. "I've been analyzing the departure patterns," she said, activating her datapad. "The species that left first were the ones with the most contact with human traders and explorers. The ones leaving now are further out, but they've been monitoring our activities." She projected her findings onto the main display. The hologram showed human expansion routes overlaid with alien departure times. The correlation was perfect and terrifying. "The Karathi were the first to go," Hedgen continued. "They abandoned their homeworld right after human engineers helped them solve their atmospheric processors problem. The processors had been broken for centuries, and we fixed them in 6 months." "That's good news, isn't it?" Jinwoo asked. "We helped them?" "That's exactly the problem," Hedgen replied. "The Karathi had accepted that their world was slowly dying. It was part of their culture, their religion, their entire worldview. They built their society around the idea that some things cannot be changed. Then humans showed up and changed the unchangeable." Minho felt his stomach sink as understanding dawned. "We didn't threaten them, we inspired them. Inspiration is apparently terrifying to species that have built their entire existence around accepting limitations," Hedgen said. "I've been studying the cultural patterns of the fleeing civilizations. They all share one thing in common: achieve stability. By accepting that certain things were impossible, the main display shifted to show examples. The ethereal dominion had spent 10,000 years believing that their storm-racked homeworld could never be tamed. The Voidwalkers had accepted that faster-than-light travel had natural limits. The Timekeepers had built their entire philosophy around the idea that the past could never be changed. Then they encountered humans, Yuna said, her voice barely audible. We don't accept impossible, Minho added. We see limits as challenges. And apparently that attitude is contagious, Hedgen confirmed. Reports I'm getting from our trade stations show the same pattern everywhere. Alien populations that have contact with humans start questioning their traditional limitations. Their young people begin asking why things have to stay the same forever. The monitoring station fell silent, except for the quiet hum of the electronics and the occasional burst of static from the communication arrays. Outside the windows, Earth turned peacefully in space, unaware that its children had become the most feared force in the galaxy. So what do we do? Jinwoo asked finally. Yuna looked at the spreading pattern of abandoned worlds on the display. We keep being human, I suppose, whether they run from us or not. Captain Gina Choi stood on the bridge of the exploration ship New Dawn, watching the massive space station grow larger on the main screen. The structure was beautiful in an alien way, with flowing curves that seemed to pulse with soft blue light, even though it had been abandoned for months. No life signs detected, reported Chief Engineer Hyun So from his station. But the station's main computer is still active. We're getting some kind of automated signal. Gina nodded and adjusted her uniform. This was humanity's first expedition into the territories abandoned by the Ethereal Dominion. The Ethereals had been one of the oldest known civilizations, existing for over 3 million years. They had simply vanished one day, leaving behind empty cities and silent worlds. Take us in slowly, she ordered. I want full scans of everything. Docking process took nearly an hour. The station's automated systems guided them to a berth designed for ships much larger than the New Dawn. As they walked through the empty corridors, their footsteps echoed strangely in the vast spaces. Captain, I'm reading an active AI construct in the central hub, Hyun reported, checking his scanner. It seems to be some kind of historical archive. The central hub was a circular room with walls covered in strange symbols that shifted and moved like living things. In the center stood a platform surrounded by holographic projectors. As they approached, the projectors activated, and a figure appeared before them. The hologram was tall and thin, its form shifting like mist, but maintaining a roughly humanoid shape. When it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. Are the humans, it said simply. We wondered when you would arrive. Gina stepped forward, trying to hide her nervousness. I'm Captain Choi of the Earth Exploration Service. Ah, are you the only one left here? I am not alive as you understand it, the AI replied. I am a memory keeper, left behind to record the final days of the ethereal dominion, my creators thought. It important that someone understand why we left? Why did you leave? Gina asked. We never threatened your people, barely even knew you existed. The AI's form flickered, and for a moment it almost seemed to smile. Threatened. No, Captain. You are far more dangerous than any threat. You carry something that we cannot fight, cannot hide from, cannot cure. The holographic projectors around the room activated, filling the space with images of human colonies and settlements. Gina saw familiar scenes of human expansion across the galaxy, mining operations on gas giants, cities built inside asteroids, research stations in the hearts of nebulae. Your species refuses to accept the word impossible, the AI continued. Where other races see unchangeable facts, you see problems to solve. Where we see eternal limitations, you see temporary obstacles. More images appeared showing alien worlds, before and after human contact. Gina watched in amazement as the displays showed the transformation of entire civilizations. The Korathi lived for 50,000 years believing their homeworld was dying, the AI explained. Their atmospheric processors were failing, and they accepted this as natural law. They built their entire culture around the idea of slow extinction. Then your engineers arrived and fixed the problem in 6 months. The images shifted to show the Korathi homeworld, its skies clearing for the first time in millennia. Gina could see the alien cities expanding, new construction everywhere, populations growing instead of shrinking. The Zephyrians believed that quantum manipulation had absolute limits, the AI continued. They spent 2 million years perfecting their technology within those boundaries. Then they watched human children play with quantum toys that broke their fundamental laws. We were just sharing our knowledge, Gina protested. We thought we were helping. You were helping? The AI agreed. That is exactly the problem. Help implies that change is possible. Change implies that the current state of things is not permanent. For species that have built their entire existence around accepting permanent limitations, this is a terrifying concept. The displays changed again, showing ethereal cities. Gina could see the elegant spires and flowing architecture, but also the stagnation. The same buildings, the same patterns, the same lives repeated for thousands of years without change. People achieved perfect harmony, the AI said. We had no war, no conflict, no chaos. We accepted our place in the universe and found peace in that acceptance. Our young were taught that wisdom meant recognizing what cannot be changed. And then you met us, Gina said quietly. One of your merchant ships visited our outer colonies, the AI confirmed. The crew was curious about our storm control technology. They asked why we only used it defensively. Why didn't we harness the storms for power? Why didn't we use them to terraform dead worlds? The images showed ethereal scientists working alongside human engineers, their ancient technology combined with human innovation to create something entirely new. Within one generation, our young people began asking the same questions, the AI continued. They wanted to know why we accepted limitations that could be overcome. They started experimenting, creating changing things that had remained the same for millions of years. That sounds wonderful, Ian said from behind Gina. It was chaos, the AI replied. Beautiful, terrible chaos. Our perfect harmony shattered. Our young abandoned their assigned roles and began choosing their own paths. They questioned everything, changed everything, improved everything. The AI's form flickered again, and Gina thought she detected something like sadness in its voice. We had to choose, it said. Embrace the chaos your species brings, or flee from it. Most chose to flee. They believed that preserving our old ways was more important than growth. But not all of them, Gina observed. No, the AI admitted. Some stayed. They are scattered across the abandoned worlds, learning to dream of impossible things. They have been infected by your greatest weapon. What weapon? Hope. Commander Doyen Nam stood at the observation window of the colony ship Persistence, watching the planet Cathara spin slowly below them. Lightning flashed constantly across its surface, creating a web of electrical storms that never stopped. The planet looked angry, as if the sky itself was at war. Storm activity is increasing as we get closer, reported Navigator Soyang Han from the bridge. The electrical readings are off our charts. I've never seen anything like this. Doyen smiled and pressed his hand against the cool glass of the window. Perfect. That's exactly what we need. Behind him, other colonists gathered to look at their new home. Some looked worried, others excited. This planet had been abandoned by the ethereal dominion after 10,000 years of failed attempts to build cities on its surface. The constant storms made construction impossible, or so the ethereals had believed. Engineering report, Doyen called into his communication device. Chief Engineer Minabe's voice crackled back through the static. All storm collectors are ready, Commander. The moment we touch down, we'll have more power than we know what to do with. What the ethereals saw as a curse, humans saw as unlimited free energy. The storms that had driven away an ancient civilization would power humanity's newest colony. The landing was rough. Wind and lightning battered the Persistence as it descended through the atmosphere. But the ship's storm collectors immediately began harvesting the electrical energy. And within minutes, all systems were running at full power. Welcome to New Cathara, Doyen announced over the ship's communication system as they touched down. Let's build a city. The work began immediately. Human engineers had designed buildings that could flex with the wind and channel lightning harmlessly into the ground. Instead of fighting the storms, they worked with them. Construction robots moved through the howling winds, Metal frames actually strengthened by the constant electrical charge in the air. But the humans were not alone on Cathara. Small groups of ethereals had chosen to stay behind rather than abandon their ancestral home. These remnants watched from hidden shelters as the humans began their impossible task. Elder Vashti was the oldest of the remaining ethereals. He had lived through 5,000 years of failed attempts to tame Kithra's storms. His people had built underground cities to hide from the weather, accepting that the surface would always be too dangerous for permanent settlement. On the third day after the humans landed, Vashti's curiosity overcame his caution. He approached the human construction site during a particularly violent storm. His energy form flickering as lightning crashed around him. What he saw made him stop in amazement. The humans were not hiding from the storm. They were dancing with it. Workers moved across the construction site, wearing special suits that channeled electrical currents safely around their bodies. Cranes and robots operated normally despite the constant lightning strikes. Buildings rose from the ground with metal spires that actually attracted lightning, feeding the energy into massive storage systems. Incredible, Vashti whispered to himself. Not really, said a voice behind him. It's just basic engineering. Vashti turned to see a human woman approaching. She wore one of the electrical suits, and her hair was standing up from the static charge in the air. I'm Mina Bay, chief engineer, she said with a smile. You must be one of the locals. We were hoping to meet some of you. I am Vashti, the elder replied, his form shimmering with uncertainty. I have watched your people work. Out you. Build in the storms? Tried for 10,000 years and always failed? Mina looked around at the construction site, where humans continued working despite the lightning flashing overhead. We don't fight the storms. We use them. All that electrical energy was going to waste. Now it powers our entire colony. But the danger, ... There's always danger, Mina said simply. But that doesn't mean we stop trying. We just find ways to work with the danger instead of running from it. Over the following months, Vashti visited the growing human settlement regularly. He watched as they built not just one city, but 3 interconnected communities across the planet's surface. The storms that had terrorized his people for millennia became the foundation of human civilization on Cathara. The humans built transparent domes that turned lightning into spectacular light shows. They created parks where the electrical energy made plants grow faster and brighter than anywhere else in the galaxy. Children played in playgrounds where controlled lightning danced between metal sculptures. Your people make it look easy, Vashti said during one of his visits. He was speaking with Commander Do-Yoon, who was watching his daughter play in the storm park. It's not easy, Do-Yoon replied. But we've learned that impossible usually just means nobody's figured out how yet. People spent centuries accepting that some things cannot be changed, Vashti said quietly. And now, the elder's form flickered with new patterns of light. For the first time in thousands of years, he felt something stirring inside him that he had almost forgotten. It took him a moment to recognize the feeling. I wonder what else. We accepted too quickly, he admitted. That night, Vashti did something he had not done in 5 millennia. He began to plan, not just to survive tomorrow, but to build something new. He thought about the abandoned ethereal cities beneath the ground, and wondered if they could be connected to the human settlements on the surface. For the first time since the humans had arrived, he began to dream of possibilities instead of limitations. The infection had spread to one more mind, and Vashti found that he did not want to be cured. 6 months later, the first joint human ethereal construction project began. They were building an elevator that would connect the underground cities to the surface, allowing the electrical storms to power both civilizations. The impossible was becoming routine. Admiral Taeyong Park stood on the bridge of the massive exploration ship Horizon's Edge, staring into the dark space between galaxies. His mission was unlike anything humanity had ever attempted before. They were chasing the aliens who had fled so far from human space that they had left the galaxy entirely. Long-range sensors are picking up massive energy signatures ahead, reported Sensor Chief Nari Zheng from her station. Admiral, it's enormous, like an entire civilization just floating in the void. Through the main viewing screen, tiny lights began to appear in the darkness. As they got closer, Those lights revealed themselves to be ships, thousands of them. Some were as large as cities, others were small personal craft. All of them drifted. Together in the emptiness between galaxies like a vast floating nation, they built a refuge fleet, Taeyang said in amazement. How many species do you think are out there? Sensors are reading at least 40 different ship designs, Nari replied. This isn't just one race running away. This is everyone who is afraid of us, all working together. Communications Officer Kyung-soo raised his hand. Admiral Weir. Being hailed. Multiple ships are sending messages. Put the main one through. The voice that filled the bridge was artificial, translated through multiple language systems to reach something humans could understand. Human vessel, you are not welcome here. This space is quarantined. Turn back now. Taeyang stepped forward. Toward the communication panel. This is Admiral Park of the Earth's Exploration Service. We come in peace. We only want to talk. Talk is exactly what we fled from, the voice replied coldly. You may dock with Coordination Ship 7 Alpha, but know that you enter a place of exile. We are the refugees from your influence. The docking process took hours. The ship they approached was huge, clearly built from parts of many different alien technologies working together. As Taeyang and his diplomatic team walked through the corridors, they saw beings from dozens of species working side by side. The council chamber was circular, with representatives from many different races arranged around a central platform. Some floated in energy fields, others stood on mechanical legs, and a few existed as shifting clouds of gas contained in transparent suits. High Coordinator Zephlin spoke for the group. She was a crystalline being whose body refracted light into beautiful patterns. When she moved, rainbow colors danced across the walls. Welcome to the Exile Fleet, Admiral Park, she said. You should not have come here. This place exists to protect the galaxy from what you represent. What do we represent? Taeyang asked. We're just explorers trying to understand the universe. A rippling laugh came from several council members. A gas form entity in a containment suit spoke next. Just explorers? Admiral, do you know what? My people were like before we encountered your merchant ships. Taeyang shook his head. We achieved perfect unity over 1 million years ago, the entity continued. No individual thoughts, no personal desires, no chaos. Every member of our species knew exactly what to do at every moment. We had no crime, no conflict, no confusion. We were perfectly efficient. That sounds peaceful, Captain Salman Lee said from behind Taeyang. It was, the entity agreed. Until your traders visited our worlds and began asking questions. Why don't you create art? Why don't you explore? Why doesn't anyone ever do anything unexpected? They were just curious. But their questions were like poison to our unity. Zephlin's crystalline form shifted to darker colors. Within 1 generation, our young people began asking the same questions. They wanted to know why efficiency required the death of imagination. They started creating individual art, making personal choices, becoming ... unique. Isn't that good? Solomon asked. Our perfect order collapsed, the gas entity replied sadly. Some of us tried to adapt, but the chaos was too much. We had spent 1 million years without any individual thought. Suddenly everyone wanted to be different, to express themselves, to grow in their own direction. Another council member spoke up, this one a machine-like being with multiple arms. My civilization built the greatest computational networks in the galaxy. We solved every mathematical problem, answered every scientific question, achieved perfect knowledge. Then we met humans. What happened? Taeyang asked, though he was beginning to understand. You taught us about wonder, the machine being replied, about questions that exist not to be answered, but to be explored, about the joy of not knowing everything. Our perfect knowledge became a prison we wanted to escape from. Around the council chamber, similar stories emerged. Species after species described how contact with humans had disrupted their ancient stability. The hive masters who had achieved perfect control through absolute order found their workers wanting individual names. The time locks who had accepted that the past could never be changed watched human historians prove them wrong. The void singers, who had spent eons in meditation, discovered that humans found enlightenment through action rather than stillness. "You make us want more than we are," Zephlin said finally. "You make us dissatisfied with perfection.
Us.
You teach us to dream of impossible things." "And that's bad?" Taeyong asked. "God, it's terrifying," she replied. "Change is chaos. Growth is unpredictable. Hope is dangerous because it makes you reach for things you might not achieve." Through the chamber's viewing windows, Taeyong could see the refugee fleet stretching into the distance. But he also noticed something else. Smaller ships were breaking away from the main fleet, heading back toward the galaxy. "Some of you are leaving," he observed. Zephlin's colors dimmed with what might have been sadness. "Our young ones. They monitor your transmissions, watch your entertainment, study your history. They see your impossible victories and ask why we ran from hope." "Maybe because hope isn't something to run from," Solomon suggested gently. For a long moment, the council chamber was silent. Then, one by one, the younger representatives began to speak. They talked about dreams they had never shared, questions they had never asked, possibilities they had never considered. The contagion was spreading, even here in the darkness between galaxies. The space around Admiral Taeyong Park's fleet began to twist and bend in ways that hurt to look at. Reality folded in on itself like paper being crumpled by invisible hands. Stars disappeared and reappeared in impossible positions. The normal rules of physics seemed to break down completely. "What's happening to our sensors?" Captain Soman Lee called out as alarms began ringing throughout the bridge of the horizon's edge. "Everything's going crazy," Sensor Chief Neri Zheng replied, her voice tight with fear. "It's like space itself is being rewritten around us." Suddenly, the chaos stopped. The fleet found itself in a place that existed outside normal reality. The walls around them seemed to be made of pure mathematics, geometric patterns that shifted and changed with each heartbeat. This was not a place meant for physical beings. "Welcome to the Nexus," came a voice that seemed to speak directly into their minds, rather than through their ears. "I am Prime Architect Omnix. You humans have caused quite enough trouble." The being that appeared before them was ancient beyond imagination. It had no fixed form, shifting between different shapes made of light and thought and pure will. Sometimes it looked almost human. Other times it became geometric patterns that hurt to stare at directly. "You're the one behind all this," Taeyong said, trying to keep his voice steady. "You're the reason all those species fled. I am the keeper of cosmic order," Omnix replied. "For millions of years, I have maintained stability throughout the universe. Every species had its place, its role, its limitations. The galaxy was peaceful and predictable." Captain Salmon stepped forward, her diplomatic training taking over despite the impossible situation. "We never meant to disrupt anything. We're just trying to survive and grow like any other species." The architect's form shifted to something like amusement. "We'll survive and grow." Such simple words for such a dangerous concept. "Do you understand what growth means on a cosmic scale?" The space around them filled with images of the galaxy as it had been before human expansion. Ancient civilizations maintained perfect stability for millions of years. Each species had found its balance and remained there, unchanging and eternal. This was order, Omnix explained. This was peace. No wars over resources, because everyone accepted what they had. No conflicts over territory, because everyone stayed in their assigned regions. No chaos, because everyone understood their limitations. "It looks empty," Salmon observed. "Empty of chaos." "Yes," the architect agreed. "Empty of the dangerous unpredictability that your species brings wherever it goes." More images appeared, showing human expansion across the galaxy. Wherever humans went, the ancient patterns of stability broke down. Species began questioning their traditional roles, pushing against their accepted boundaries, reaching for things they had never dared to want before. "You see problems where others saw natural law," Omnix continued. "You refuse to? Accept that some things cannot be changed. You teach others to refuse as well." "Maybe some things shouldn't be unchangeable," Taeyong said quietly. The architect's form flickered, and for a moment the geometric patterns around them seemed to stutter. What did you say? Maybe the universe wasn't meant to stay the same forever, Salman added. Maybe it was designed to grow, to change, to surprise itself. Possible, Omnix said, but there was something different in its voice now. Chaos leads to destruction. Change leads to conflict. Growth leads to instability. Or maybe Taeyang continued, stability leads to death. Maybe a universe that never changes is a universe that stops living. The ancient being went very still. Around them, the mathematical walls of the Nexus began to shift in new patterns. For the first time in millions of years, Prime Architect Omnix was experiencing something it had forgotten existed: doubt. I have maintained cosmic order since the universe was young, it said slowly. I have prevented chaos, stopped conflicts, maintained the balance that keeps everything stable. And what did that give you? Salman asked gently. The images around them changed, showing the same civilizations over millions of years. The same cities, the same patterns, the same lives repeated. Endlessly, without variation. Perfect stability that looked increasingly like a beautiful prison. I gave the universe peace, Omnix said, but the words sounded uncertain now. You gave it sleep, Taeyang replied. But maybe it's time for the universe to wake up. The architect's form began to change, new patterns emerging that spoke of something dangerous and wonderful. You would risk everything for the possibility of growth. We'd risk stagnation for the possibility of wonder, Salman answered. The silence that followed seemed to stretch across eternity. Then, incredibly, the Prime Architect began to experience something it had not felt in millions of years. Not doubt this time, but curiosity. What would happen if the universe was allowed to grow without limits? What wonders might emerge from controlled chaos? What impossible things might become possible? You are the most dangerous species I have ever encountered, Omnix said finally. You weaponize hope itself. Is that such a bad thing? Taeyang asked. The ancient being's form shifted one final time, settling into something almost like a smile, perhaps. Perhaps it is time to find out. The Nexus began to dissolve around them, reality reasserting itself. But as normal space returned, something fundamental had changed. Throughout the galaxy, species that had fled began to turn their ships around. Ancient civilizations that had hidden in dark space started broadcasting signals again. The word spread quickly through the refugee fleets and abandoned worlds. The Prime Architect had chosen change over stability. The universe was free to grow again. In the months that followed, the galaxy transformed. Species that had stagnated for millions of years began to dream of new possibilities. Ancient technologies were combined in innovative ways. Worlds that had been abandoned for centuries saw new construction as their former inhabitants returned. The infection of hope had reached even the oldest minds in the universe. Once infected, there was no cure except to embrace the wonderful chaos of endless growth. The age of stagnation was over. The age of wonder had begun.